This is one of my favorite labs because I just think that this is such a cool tool, the way that random.org has incorporated Google Earth or Google Maps into this random coordinate picker. So what we're doing in this project is first we need to collect some data. And so we're going to pick 50 coordinates. And ideally we would have at least 100 coordinates. So if you want to get a full 100, that'd be awesome. But you might not want to spend that much time picking these coordinates. But we just click Pick Coordinates. My first coordinate appears to be up here in Norway. And if you can't tell exactly what's going on, you can always zoom in a bit because every once in a while you end up on water. But it does look like here that we are on land, but we might have been kind of close to some water. But here I would say that this first spot is land. So we'll pick another coordinate, and that's definitely water outside of New Zealand. Pick another coordinate, we've got some water again, and we keep doing this until we have enough spots. So when it's not clear, like I said, I will usually zoom in as much as I can just to make sure that it really was a land under there and not a little river or something like that. So you're going to get your data by getting these random coordinates. And then what I want you to do is to go into StatCrunch. So here in StatCrunch, when you open up, the first thing that you're going to need to do is to calculate the confidence interval for the proportion. So to do this, we'll go to Stat, Proportion Stats, One Sample, and we're going to use the summary. Now, if you wanted to go in here and type in land and water for each of those coordinates, then you would have data, but with this lab, it's probably easier for you just to count how many W's and L's that you put in your recording sheet and calculate that for the summary. So let's suppose, I'm just going to make this up, but let's suppose I had 40 out of my 50 observations were water. So I'm going to start with a confidence interval, and you can do a 90, a 95, 99% confidence interval, whichever one you're trying to get. And so I'm going to do a 95% confidence interval and click Compute. And so my output here gives me the lower limit and the upper limit. Now, because I only had 50 observations, it is a pretty large interval. So I have everything from 68.9% to 91.1% for the percent of the Earth that's actually covered in water. So if you were to get 100 samples, you would have a much smaller confidence interval because with more data, then you can be more confident without having to have such a large interval. So that's how you get the confidence interval. When you want to get the hypothesis test, you can either edit, and then it'll take you back to the screen. You can just switch over to hypothesis test, and we're going to test against 71%. And our alternative hypothesis here is just that it's not 71%. In this particular scenario, we don't know if it's actually more or less, so we're just looking for it being something different from 71%. Now, if you didn't want to edit and you just were starting from scratch, you could go to Stat, Proportion Stat, One Sample again with Summary again, and you would type in your data, and I'll change this, 0.71. Now you hit Compute, and you will get in your output the Z-stat, that's your test statistic, and then your p-value. And so here, my p-value is greater than our 0.05, and so that would tell us that we would not reject our null hypothesis. So our null was that the true proportion was in fact 0.71, and this hypothesis test tells us that there was not enough evidence to suggest that the proportion was something different from 0.71. So that's the way that you need to use StatCrunch in order to complete this lab.